Around 3100 BC, the first pharaoh Narmer ruled and is credited with unifying Egypt, having a major presence over the neighboring Canaan. This relief, the Narmer palette, depicts the king as a larger-than-life ruler, son of a god, a concept that would become more prevalent with rulers of both Egypt and the surrounding region, stretching throughout antiquity and even in through the Roman Empire and beyond. Hey y'all, it's your good buddy Justin here, Leopard Stripe. The universe does not want me to make this video, but damn it, we're gonna press on. The aforementioned scenario is hardly unique, be it Roman emperors claiming to be gods or chosen by God, Charlemagne being crowned Holy Roman Emperor. I'm sure totally by surprise on his part, totally by surprise. Medieval art and stories of crusaders in glory. Propaganda has always been and always will be part of the human civilization experience, usually political in nature. The need to convince as many people as possible, in as simple terms as possible, of this belief you want them to hold. The aim is not here, it's here. And so the best propaganda is always as simple as possible, with the goal to avoid as much potential mental filtration, as much rationality and reasoning as possible on your way to their emotions. Typically, we find propaganda in two flavors: cult of personality, cult of ideology. With cult of personality, the focus is on an individual, say a king or a queen, or a select group of individuals, a Politburo, a party, for example. Usually with the cult of ideology, it's more collective, like a us versus them type lecture messaging. Think Teamsters or, a lot of what we see now, communists in the streets, that kind of thing. Exalting a stench of pride, strength, anger. Today, we're going to look at some propaganda from the American Revolution into present day. Possibly one of the most simplistic posters and brilliant comes from Benjamin Franklin, the key and electricity guy. Join or die. At its most basic, which would you rather do? It seems like a no-brainer. If our colony doesn't join this revolution, we're dead. But initially, this graphic was in support of the British in the French and Indian War in 1754, 20 years before the grumblings of the American Revolution, effectively making this the first piece of American propaganda. It features a woodcut of a disjointed snake in the initials of the 13 colonies. Yet, you'll notice not all 13 colonies are listed, with New England encompassing the entirety of the New England colonies, and Georgia being left off entirely. Georgia was iffy at the start of the Revolution, the only colony that didn't send representation to the First Continental Congress in 1774. But the design is simple, and everyone would understand what it means immediately. And that's another hallmark of effective propaganda. It has to be incredibly simple, yet not really telling someone what to do. Yes, this says join or die, but this is kind of an outlier. It's a piece of information that requires an elementary level of logic to decipher, allowing the viewer to arrive at the logic themselves so that they feel more in on it and therefore more receptive to its messaging, rather than if they'd been beaten over the head with, do this, believe this. Much of the propaganda in this area would have been via political cartoon, with images such as this one showing the Boston Massacre. This would have been to conjure images of injustice, British excessive force, and a threat to all colonists. It's obviously not an amazing drawing. It has kind of medieval vibes, but the redcoats are coldly, robotically firing into the crowd, which includes men trying to help one another, one even holding his hand up, asking them to cease fire. And check this out down here. Engraved, printed, and sold by Paul Revere, Boston. This image has an inscription that reads, published in 1770 by Paul Revere in Boston. This would have been added sometime after. This is not Paul Revere's real signature. In France, inspired by the New America, they threw their own revolution and a little over a decade later. For me, this painting right here, Eugene Delacroix, Liberty Leading the People, I'd put this up there next to Washington crossing the Delaware in terms of nationalistic, just awesome vibe artwork. This gives a sense of an entity, a people's uprising led by goodness of liberty. There's something about your flag flying, the vibrancy of the red, white, and blue breaking through the coarse, muted colors, and in this time of distress, it's just energizing, uplifting, and calls upon patriotism. Of course, we know from our vantage point that the French Revolution devolved into an absolute shit show. Nevertheless, this painting does it. Moving into the 19th century, John Gast painted this piece called American Progress, which was a visual representation of manifest destiny, with Columbia moving westward, telegraph lines in tow with the railways. Much of the job of propaganda like this is to reduce and simplify complex concepts into romanticized simplicity. Propaganda has to take it to 10 with no room for caveats, nuance, or subtlety. It bears the message, we are the righteous. This really turned a page in the 20th century with World War I and the introduction of more mechanized printing techniques and the advent of minimalism in high art. Detailed scenes and paintings began to give way to simplistic, minimalist backgrounds with large, heavy fonts. The figures at this time were still classically illustrated for the most part, but propaganda was becoming modernized. The master of World War I era propaganda posters was James Montgomery Flagg. He illustrated a number of posters in the war effort for the US and the UK, but his most famous and iconic, which you would know immediately, is the I Want You, Uncle Sam poster. So simplistic, plain background, the intense stare of Uncle Sam, the red, white, and blue blazing through with large I Want You lettering. Flagg did a number of illustrations for war propaganda posters, and much like Ben Franklin's Join or Die, Flagg's I Want You concept originated for the British. It was so popular, came back and he created one for America. In this era, we're still in this publication style of artwork with details and a sense of traditional art. This has an Art Nouveau look, like Alphonse Mucha. There's a lot of play here and experimenting. Now, turning the page into World War II, after the Bauhaus and the fascist and communist propaganda streamlined graphic design, these would rewrite the books on quick, poppy propaganda. The flat, limited color palette, red, heavy, going for minimal mental reasoning, and with propaganda, the fewer mental faculties engaged, the better. By reducing the realism of the figures in the image, the need to ask questions is removed because the answer has been reduced down with the detail. Strength, happiness, progress, prosperity, these are the tenets of fascist and communist propaganda. German fascist and minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, formulated propaganda in a way that recent studies have sort of compiled down his directives into 11 tenets, such as simplification, removing any nuance, sprinkling little lies into objective truth, scapegoating, repetition, exaggeration, etc. This is dehumanizing your opponent to the point where those within the ideology no longer view them with any kind of human empathy. This is why the zombie genre, in my opinion, was so popular in the noughts and tens, because the first-person shooter genre game became so prevalent, mowing down hordes of zombies. There's not really guilt associated with that the same way with mowing down people or animals. Even in a video game, you have this sense of empathy and there's a sense of wrong, just even if they are video game people and animals. And in this same family of ideology, communist propaganda out of the Soviet Union really took off and took graphic design to another level. Bright reds, extreme streamlining, bold contrast, the agitprop, the Soviet's Ministry of Agitation and Propaganda, launched an aggressive Cold War campaign filled with strength, prosperity, happiness. While the reality was much more bleak, with poverty and food shortages rampant, and authoritarianism, the Berlin Wall, while socialist, communist, and fascist states relied on state run and controlled entities to churn out the communications, the capitalist United States had perhaps the most powerful arm of propaganda imaginable, the free market culture. Propaganda wasn't something that people had to be beat over the head with. It wasn't relegated to distant ideas on some poster. It was becoming and ensconced in everyday culture. On one hand, this is a great thing because there's a lived sincerity, a proof of concept. On the other side, though, propaganda becomes less perceptible. And so when inconvenient realities don't really align with the idealized version, there may be a concerted effort to deny it's a problem to begin with, just to keep up appearances. And while capitalist propaganda has perpetuated itself through our pop culture, the communist element has maintained a presence. Agitator propaganda is still relevant and still just as effective when Goebbels in the Soviet Politburo first deployment of it. It's even become an aesthetic in pop art in itself, really to the point in which it's lost its edge, or maybe we don't see it anymore for what it is. And that might be worse. Today, if you've been paying attention, you have to view everything as though it's got some ulterior motive. It's got some underlying propaganda to it. Not only that, but with today's media landscape, we retreat to our own little echo chambers. We seek out and demand a nonstop drip feed of our own desired propaganda. Let me tell you, the AC went out in my wife's car. So she's commandeered mine for the past month. I can't get my phone to sync up with her car, so I've been listening to just terrestrial FM radio. You know, it's been pretty refreshing, I guess. That word. I have to listen to whatever is on the few stations that I get. So I'm listening to like country, pop, classics, talk. There's not an endless swipe of content. I have a finite number of options. So I appreciate and weigh those options greater. And I think more people need that in their lives. They need to just be exposed and around things they won't necessarily agree with, and be okay with not agreeing with them. And not just disagreeing, I mean, just tastes, you know? I mean, I'm not a country music fan or anything. I did go to what's that guy's name? The Whiskey Glasses guy. I did go to one of his concerts, and I really liked it. I thought it was a good concert. But, you know, on the radio, I'm not a country guy, but I'll listen to country here and there just because, you know, it's on, and, you know, it doesn't have to be everything at my beck and call all the time. That's one of the great things, you know, when MTV was around. You know, there would be MTV, not so much country, but you'd have like rap and pop and metal and alternative rock and all this stuff sprinkled in together. And there was kind of a little bit more of a broader horizons back then. The thing about propaganda is that it and its adherents don't see it as propaganda. They just see it as sort of what it is, like speaking the truth. And with AI, the better it gets, the less and less you'll be able to tell what's real and what is deceptive propaganda. You have to assume everything you're looking at is coming to you and question every word, every eyebrow raise, every voice inflection, and ask yourself, what is this person on the screen trying to make me believe? So what do you think I'm trying to make you believe? Actually, I'd just like you to believe that I'm glad you watched this video and I hope you found it entertaining. This is a loaded topic and it's impossible to get to the entirety of the scope of every little avenue in it. You got politics, art, probably religious, like any non any non dinner table appropriate topic. We're kind of getting there on here. Anyway, I'm glad you watched this video. I hope you found it entertaining. If you'd like to check out my artwork, you can find it at leopardstripe.org or through Etsy at leopardstripe. I do original art, prints, shirts. If you go to leopardstripe.org, I'm also a author. You can find my first book, Destination Ursa Major, Part 1. Part 2 is in the oven right now, as we'll say. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Come back again for the next one. Like and subscribe. So in the meantime, get out, touch some sun, get some grass, and find the art in everything.